Okay. Well, hi everyone. I think we're rolling. Great. My name is Ann Calhoun. For those of you who don't know me, I am a nurse and I've been using doTERRA products for about 3.5, 4 years. And I'm really, really, really excited to come to you today to talk about women's health, especially for the fact that we just had Mother's Day yesterday. And this is a topic that I just spoke on this weekend in Chicago to about 1,000 people. And I'm so proud because we also had a physician, an ear, nose, and throat doctor that spoke on kind of using doTERRA products from a physician perspective. And I got the chance to connect with him after I spoke, and he said, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to share with my wife what you said, and maybe I should take some of those products." And so it was really great to be able to even give the physician in the room some new information. So I want to share with you a picture of some of the women that are important in my life. This is my mom on the left, my mother-in-law next to her in the orange, and then my daughter Genevieve, who is 13. And one of the reasons that this topic is just so important to me is because of the role of women in this world. Women are so influential. The people in this picture not only have influenced me, but have influenced the people I love, right? My mother-in-law made my husband in large part who he is, which has blessed me greatly. I want you to stop a minute and I want you to think about the women in your life that have mattered to you so greatly. And I want you to think about the fact that in some cases it was what they said to you, right? The things that they have said that spoke life into you, that kept you going, that gave you confidence. In some cases it was the time that they've spent with you that spoke volumes of love. And in some cases, it's the example that they set, right? It's the persistence that they have. It's the resilience that they have. It's the integrity and the work ethic that they have that have influenced you greatly. And I want you to know that you have that same influence. You mean the world to a person or lots of people, and they deserve the best. They deserve the best version of you that you have to give. And so I want you to take the time today, as we're talking about this topic, to realize that feeling your best and being able to interact with the most love you can with every person that you can matters so much. So we are going to start with hormones. Now, I think for a lot of us, when we think women's health, right, we think menopause. Well, it's so much more than that, and we're going to talk about so much more than that. So this is a picture of our endocrine system in our body, and our endocrine system is the system in our body that's responsible for hormones, and you see listed here a lot of hormones, not all of them by any means, but some major hormones in our body. And I want you to know that estrogen and testosterone, they're important hormones, but they're reproductive hormones. There's so many hormones in our body that are responsible for our very life. Now, a hormone is a chemical messenger, and chemical messengers are sent all throughout the body to communicate with our organs about what to do. So this can impact our heart rate. This can impact our blood pressure. This can impact the way our brain functions. So we're going to start with one of what I feel is one of the major, sometimes overlooked components of the endocrine system. And we're going to start with our adrenals. And the reason that we're going to start with our adrenals is because our adrenals, I like to say, are one of the first dominoes. Now, one of the things that happens in our body is these hormones that you see are not functioning in silos, right? Instead, it's quite the opposite. Every level of a hormone affects another level of a different hormone. So imagine a row of dominoes, right? And if we push over the first domino, it's going to affect every single domino down the line. And so many times, our symptoms will be a middle domino or a domino at the end of the line, right? And we treat those symptoms because those dominoes have fallen over, or those hormones are out of balance. When in fact, so many times if we go back to the first domino and we affect the levels of that first domino, it's going to have positive effects down the line. And that's really, really important to understand. So we're going to start with the adrenals because I really feel it's one of the first dominoes that can fall over in our hormonal system and our endocrine system. So 2 of the major hormones that are produced and associated with the adrenals are adrenaline, hence the name, right? Adrenaline and cortisol. Now, if you look here at this graph, the purple line is adrenaline, and our adrenaline in our body goes up and down and up and down and up and down. The more adrenaline we have in our body, the more cortisol we're going to have as well. Now, cortisol is a bit of an opposite hormone for adrenaline. Cortisol is responsible for bringing the body back into balance, to helping to de-stress our body. The problem is the more chronic stress we have in our life, the higher our level of cortisol. So where does this stress come from? Well, in days of old, this came from a dangerous situation. So adrenaline is our fight or flight hormone. And those are the 2 things that we do when we are in danger. We fight or we flight. The problem is we live in a world now where we're under chronic stress, and that chronic stress allows our body to feel like it's in a fight or flight situation when in fact it's just not, right? That adrenaline comes from relational stress. It comes from our overwhelming to-do list. It comes from financial worries, right? It comes from worrying about the people that we love if they're in a stressful situation. And so the more we put our bodies in this height of fight or flight, the more effects down the line in our hormonal system we're going to see. Now, one of the things that I want to just kind of plant in the back of your head is that progesterone is the primary raw material for cortisol, okay? Our body has to create cortisol in order for us to stay alive. It's just a fact of life. And one of the things that our body needs in order to make cortisol is progesterone. We're going to talk a lot about progesterone as we go along, and so I just want you to file that away in the back of your head. Now, the other thing that I want you to remember is that progesterone is also the raw material for testosterone. So if you have a man in your life that you love and he's having difficulties with his testosterone level, it could come back to the level of progesterone. Dorothy, I saw that you raised your hand. Hey, throw a question into the question and answer, and I'm going to go through those questions at the end. Okay, so any questions you have as we're talking, because I know you're going to have them, you have a question and answer button. You can just type anything you want into there, and we'll go over it. So what does adrenal fatigue look like? So if we're constantly running in this state of stress, our adrenals are going to get tired. And that's sometimes what you're going to hear called adrenal fatigue. And adrenal fatigue is a state of our adrenals being constantly going, constantly pumping out adrenaline and cortisol because of this overwhelming stress that we're always feeling. And the result of that can be what I call a feeling of your motor running constantly, right? So it's that feeling of like a higher heart rate and maybe a feel of a higher blood pressure, right? But a feeling of exhaustion. It's waking up in the morning and not feeling well rested. It's waking up and feeling exhausted. And it's a feeling of just kind of constant overwhelm. And this can affect your sleep. It can affect lots of different, it can affect how your skin looks, right? How your body functions. And it can definitely affect some of the other endocrine organs that we're going to talk about in a minute. Okay. So how do we support healthy adrenal function, right? Remember that this is kind of the beginning of a healthy hormonal system. So we want healthy adrenal function. Um, Interestingly enough, you guys, if you remember the doTERRA wellness lifestyle pyramid and kind of where the use of oils for symptoms really come in, that's really at the top of the pyramid. There's so much that we can do just to maintain a healthy body. And it always starts with what we eat. I want you to put food into literally one of two categories: foods that are good for you or foods that are going to harm you. And that's it. That's the only two categories you get. So part of the specifics of that would be avoiding sugar, avoiding processed foods, avoiding foods with toxins. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that you have to strip all of that out of your diet, but diminishing the amount of it is going to help significantly. The other thing is, when we talk about carbohydrates, carbohydrates are really important for us. However, I want you to get them from vegetables to the most extent possible. Vegetables, I feel like when we grew up, vegetables were in this category of like grains, proteins, fats, fruits and vegetables, and they were kind of in their own thing, right? Fruits and vegetables, or vegetables especially, are a carbohydrate. So if you can, as much as possible, get your carbohydrates from vegetables and avoid pastas and breads and all of the other processed grains, that's really going to help you a lot. The other thing is, if you're constantly in this state of go, 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 and yet feeling exhausted, limit your caffeine intake. It's going to calm your body, right? Because caffeine revs that engine even higher and keeps those adrenals going fast. And you want to give them a nice, calm environment. Supplementing in order to give your body nutrition is really, really important. There's a study that just came out that was talked about in Chicago this weekend at their Regional Product Education Summit, that over the last 50 years, our food has half of the nutrition that it did 50 years ago. So the tomatoes that we're growing now, or the tomatoes that we're buying now, has so much less nutrition than the tomatoes that our grandparents bought or our grandparents grew. And there's lots of different reasons for this. We're not going to go into that right now. The moral of the story is that your body isn't going to get what it needs from food to function really, really well. And if we want to feel great so we can be our best selves, we need better nutrition. So Lifelong Vitality is definitely the place to start. It's bioavailable, whole food nutrition that's going to give your body what it needs. If you're dealing with some fatigued adrenals, you're also going to want to add some more B vitamins, vitamins C, D, zinc, and magnesium. We're going to talk about the bone nutrient complex a little bit later, but the bone nutrient complex is going to be an excellent addition to Lifelong Vitality for those of you who have fatigued adrenals. Stress reduction is key. Using your oils for stress reduction every single day, in the air, on your skin. Getting exercise, and the reason we talk about exercise here, it may seem counterintuitive if our bodies are running to run them even more, right? But the reason for exercise here is two things. Number one, you want to be able to burn off the adrenaline that's in your bloodstream. And number two, you want exercise to function as a stress reducer. And what that means is finding exercise that you love and that afterward you feel great. You feel relaxed. You feel grateful that you had that opportunity to move your body in that way. Now, for some of you, this may be yoga, right? The thing I love about a yoga practice is that it's time that you shut your brain off and focus on holding that pose or holding that balance, whatever it is, right? But because you're focused on what you're doing, everything else in your head clears out. And that's really important. One of the other ways that you can use exercise is as a way of changing your self-talk, right? Because if our brain is constantly thinking negative thoughts, that's going to create stress, right? Those thoughts are going to send chemicals throughout our body. They're going to create negative emotions and they're going to create negative responses in our body. So for you, if you find a form of exercise that helps take those negative thoughts and put in positive thoughts in your brain, like I'm really proud of myself for doing that, right? Then that's going to be something that's going to have a trickle down effect all the way down to your adrenals. And last but not least is sleep. Sleep is going to be really, really important to be able to heal and renew our body every single day. And so we're not going to talk necessarily about sleep. There are some other webinars on sleep that you can find in our user group, in our Facebook group, but whatever you need to do, whatever habits you need to create to get good sleep, and just know that sleep is a habit. And so if you have bad sleep habits, they're not going to turn around overnight. You're going to have to be very, very consistent with what you're doing in order to change those sleep habits. One of the keys I have for you here, or tips I have for you here, is dreaming. I want you to think about the last time you dreamt, because if you're dreaming, you're getting into your REM sleep, and your REM sleep is really the deepest form of sleep. It's the most renewing cycle of sleep. If you can't remember the last time you dreamt, that's not a good thing. So as you start to change your sleep habits, if you start to dream, that's a positive sign. That's a really good sign that good things are happening with your sleep. All right, some things that you can do for your adrenals. Number one is Mito 2 Max. Mito 2 Max is an herbal supplement that doTERRA has, and the word mito in the name here stands for mitochondria. Now, mitochondria are the powerhouse of our cells. It's the area of each individual cell that creates energy. And Mito 2 Max is really great because it allows the mitochondria in the cells to have the building blocks that they need to create energy. This isn't one of those rev your heart rate up, make everything worse forms of energy. But if the mitochondria in our cells have the ability to make energy, our adrenals can work on resting, and that's important. Now, basil is interesting. You can take 2 drops of basil underneath your tongue when you feel your engine running. When you have that feeling of overwhelm and exhaustion, I want you to take 2 drops of basil right underneath your tongue. It's going to cut that engine really, really quickly. It's going to slow your adrenals down. Now, the next 3 that you see are patchouli, rose, and a blend called Whisper. These 3 do amazing things for decreasing our adrenaline. Just wanted to make sure I was right, because the next one's cortisol. So patchouli, rose, and Whisper are great to decrease your adrenaline levels. So again, the interesting thing about our adrenals is some of us don't even realize that we have this adrenal issue because this feeling of overwhelm has just become normal, and it's not supposed to be. So whichever one of these you prefer, I want you to just inhale. Just open the bottle, inhale it. You can also put it on your chest. You can put it on your wrists. Someplace where you can inhale it throughout the day. If you like diffuser jewelry, that works great as well. But this will help to calm down your adrenaline levels. Clary sage is next. Now, clary sage is going to help to decrease cortisol levels in our body, that stress hormone that gets pumped out when we have too much adrenaline. And so if you want to combine patchouli and clary sage, or rose and clary sage to get dual effect, that's awesome. You can totally do that. But again, inhaling clary sage is going to positively affect your cortisol levels in your body to decrease them. Now, the interesting thing too is that clary sage will also improve thyroid hormone. Now, that's where we're going next. I know a lot of women struggle with a dysfunctional thyroid. You guys, we talk about adrenals first because adrenal health will affect thyroid health. We'll talk about that next. So, what do thyroid hormones do? Well, thyroid hormones help our body use food for energy. So it's all about metabolism. And those of you who have a dysfunctional thyroid know this. Now, remember that the thyroid is really next in our row of dominoes. Our adrenals start first, right? And the thyroid is this kind of kind organ that will defer to the adrenals if the adrenals need help. So what the thyroid will do is it will say, you know what, I'm not going to take the progesterone that you need, adrenals. You can have it. I'm going to turn down my activity in order to give the adrenals what they need. So many times when people have thyroid issues, they get treated for thyroid issues, right? But the root cause, in some cases, being the adrenals, haven't been addressed. So remember, start with adrenals. So there's definitely this connection between how the thyroid and the adrenals work together. And that is that the body will defer to the adrenals. We'll shut down the activity of the thyroid and give the components that it's using to the adrenals to make cortisol and adrenaline. Now, the other thing that the thyroid will do is thyroid hormones are similar to the structure of estrogen and progesterone. And the receptor sites of the thyroid may be blocked if we have too much estrogen in our body. We're going to talk about estrogen dominance in a minute. But I want you to know that, again, there's this thyroid and estrogen connection. So we have thyroid and adrenals. We also have thyroid and estrogen connection. So if we work to detox our body of estrogen mimicking compounds, it can have a really great effect on how the thyroid works. So I hope that you're really getting that this is a big picture and there's lots of moving parts among all of our endocrine glands. And that just doing one small thing, decreasing our stress levels, increasing our exercise, getting really great nutrition can have this trickle-down effect throughout our body. Okay, now we're going to talk about estrogen. So this is a female hormone cycle. This is day 1 on the left, and this is day 28 on the right. Now, if you're postmenopausal, don't check out on me right now because you guys still have hormonal cycles that go on and you deal with a decrease in estrogen and what that looks like. So just stay with me for a minute. So day 1 over here on the left would be the first day of your period, right? And day 28 over here on the right is that last day of PMS right before you start your period, okay? Now, what I want you to see first is the level of estrogen. The red line is the level of estrogen. So right here in the middle of the 28 days is ovulation. And ovulation is when our estrogen is at its highest. And this is when we feel amazing. Estrogen not only is a reproductive hormone, but estrogen is so important for mood balance. Estrogen is important for the way we learn and our memory. Estrogen helps us preserve bone mass, and estrogen helps us to decrease plaque formation on vessel walls, so cardiovascular health. So when our estrogen is at its highest is when we have great verbal processing. It's when we desire intimacy. Our sex drive is at its highest. This is when we're the most pleasant to be around, right? We feel like we're on the top of the world. We feel like we could tackle anything. We're happy, right? Now, when our estrogen level drops, to the extent that it drops, we can have a lot of symptoms. But I want you to see this yellow line. When our estrogen level drops, the intention is for progesterone to take over and kind of lessen that blow a little bit. Now, one of the things that we see in our adrenals, we talked about, is progesterone is needed to make cortisol. Remember that? So if our adrenals are in overdrive because we're chronically stressed, we're not providing our body with the healthy things that it needs, we're going to have this really diminished progesterone, and that yellow peak isn't going to be a yellow peak anymore, right? Now, I also want you to think in terms of the relationship between estrogen and progesterone. The more estrogen we have and the less progesterone we have, or the ratio of the two, can wreak havoc in our body. It can give us some pretty significant mood disorders and mood changes. So if you're someone that is really pleasant to live with in the first 14 days of your cycle, and after ovulation, when your estrogen level drops, if you become a completely different person, this was me, then I want you to know that there's help. We're going to increase your progesterone. In some cases, we're going to decrease your estrogen if you've got a lot of false estrogen in your body. Okay? So remember, it's that ratio of estrogen to progesterone that we're going to talk about. Now, let's focus a little bit more specifically in on estrogen. So we talked about all the things that estrogen does. There's really two different kinds of estrogen. Now, one kind is called endogenous. And endogenous is the estrogen that our body makes. And the most ideal situation is for our body to make the perfect amount of estrogen that we need, okay? And we're going to do that through nutrition. We'll talk about that in a minute. And then there's this other kind of estrogen called exogenous. So exogenous is a form of estrogen that is not created in our body, but that we get from other sources. Now, this could be plant-based or something that's actually part of the earth, or this can be synthetic, something that was made in a laboratory somewhere, a chemical made in a laboratory. Now, exogenous is actually broken down into two different categories. One is a xenohormone or a xenoestrogen. Now, xeno is a prefix that means fake or not real. So these are hormones that don't come from inside our body, but are outside forces that are working to act as hormones in our body. And they are false messengers, okay? And what they do is these xenohormones interfere with how our body works naturally. These are disruptors. So when you hear about things like endocrine disruptors or estrogen mimicking compounds, this is what we're talking about. So where do they come from? So estrogen mimicking compounds can be found a lot of times in cosmetics. Remember that what is on you is in you. And so many times the cosmetics or lotions or sunscreens that we've put on our body have contained things like parabens or phthalates that function as endocrine disruptors. One of the things that I have recently learned is that one of the ways that we can be exposed to these xenohormones is through cotton. Now, I want you to think in cotton in terms of menstrual pads or tampons. Cotton can be one of the dirtiest crops that we're exposed to. They have a lot of pesticides put on them, and in some cases of feminine hygiene products, they're bleached, right? So it's kind of then adding insult to injury. So when we expose ourselves, our very sensitive areas, to these dirty cotton crops, we can be putting further xenohormones into our body. And that's not a good thing. So you may actually find that using something other than a kind of generic cotton tampon, using maybe a silicone menstrual cup, something like that, will actually decrease your painful cramping during your cycle as well. So you get two benefits from trying something different there. All right, now phytoestrogen. Another exogenous form of estrogen is found in phytoestrogen. So phytoestrogen is a dietary form of estrogen. Now, it doesn't contain any estrogen. I know that some of you that are watching have a lot of thoughts about estrogen being either good or bad, and I hear you. Phytoestrogen does not contain any estrogen. However, the amazing thing that phytoestrogen does is it interacts with our estrogen receptors to either detox our body of the xenohormones, which is a really big deal, because for those of you who don't want estrogen in your body, I want you to know that xenoestrogen, these chemical disruptors, they exert about a 100 to 1,000 times higher effect on our body than regular estrogen, than our endogenous estrogen. So if you're wanting to rid your body of estrogen, you need to think about ridding your body of estrogen mimicking compounds. And one of the best ways that you can do that is through phytoestrogen. It will go in, it will clean out all the receptors where these xenohormones are hanging out and help our body excrete them. For me, phytoestrogen was amazing because it was able to raise my estrogen level enough after I ovulated so that my moods didn't swing terribly the way that they always had. And, there's lots of different fixes, band-aids for mood disorders. And a lot of them don't get to the root cause and don't have an end in sight. So for me, to be recommended by my doctor to take something for my mood for 2 weeks out of every month, didn't get to the root cause. Phytoestrogen gets to the root cause. So I want to just take a minute here. We talked about finding an alternative to tampons. So a few other ways to decrease your exposure to xenohormones would be to use different things on your skin. doTERRA has a few different facial cleansing lines or facial lines that I love. I want to point out specifically, this is the doTERRA Essential Skincare line. I love the tightening serum for my over 40 skin. I love the brightening gel. Especially, I used to lifeguard outside when I was in my high school and college years, and I'm starting to see some sun damage on my skin, some darkened spots. And so the brightening gel will help reduce that. And then the anti-aging eye cream is a really nice product. I also love the Virage line. The Virage line is an anti-aging line. It's got a ton of frankincense in it. Frankincense has lots of research articles about it being effective against cancer and protective against cancer. So the Virage line is wonderful. It also just is this amazing thing to help your skin glow. And then the HD Clear is a wonderful way if you have acne prone skin or if you have teenagers in your house and you want to give them products that aren't going to expose their bodies to endocrine disruptors. The HD Clear line is a wonderful thing to do. The HD Clear Rollerball Blend can also be used as a deodorant. So deodorants are another way that we expose our body to a lot of chemicals. Finding an alternative to that is important. And that roll-on is a great way to do that. The doTERRA Spa line is, interestingly enough, I think a really great way to not only give your body chemical-free skin products, but if you use them and you inhale them, because they do contain calming essential oils, you can really affect your stress level, right? So again, doing things to decrease our stress level, to help give our adrenals what they need, that first domino in our line, is going to be great with using these. So if you have a particular favorite in this line, throw it in the chat or throw it in the Q&A so we can see that. Okay, so the products that we've talked about so far, phytoestrogen, I mentioned Bone Nutrient, and also the Claricalm, they come together in a women's health kit at a discounted rate. So you can buy all three of these together. Now, phytoestrogen is, in doTERRA's phytoestrogen, you're looking at a compound, a soy compound called genistein. I'm going to spell it for you. Write this down. Genstein. Maybe it's Genistein, genistein. Yep. So you can go to doTERRA.com, look up phytoestrogen, and see the ingredients, okay? The reason I tell you this is because phytoestrogen, or the genistein in phytoestrogen, is an isoflavone that comes from non-GMO fermented soy. Now, for some of you, I just said soy and you checked right out, right? Hear me out. There's good soy and there's bad soy. Good soy is non-GMO fermented soy. The research on the Asian diets that contain a lot of non-GMO fermented soy and their levels of cancer are fascinating, right? This compound, because it's a phytoestrogen and it detoxes our body of estrogen mimicking compounds, is actually really great for us. It's the junk soy that you find all over the grocery store that you definitely want to avoid, okay? Excuse me. Now, remember that not only women are exposed to these chemicals. right? Men are exposed to chemicals. And it's important for men to be detoxed of these chemicals as well, because this will affect their estrogen or their testosterone levels. So I take phytoestrogen every day. My husband takes it for about a week, a month. And this is really important for his hormone balance and for his hormone detox as well. Now, the bone nutrient. The bone nutrient wasn't one of my first products that I tried because I thought, I haven't hit menopause yet. I have great bone density at this point in my life. I'll worry about that after menopause when I want to maintain my healthy bones. Well, I want you to know that bone nutrient can be taken throughout a lifetime. And here's why. We build our bone mass between the ages of 14 and 24. So if you have anyone between the ages of 14 and 24, they are building bone mass, and you're not going to build it after that age. Whatever you've built in that time is all that you're going to get. So providing bone nutrient complex for young adults between the ages of 14 and 24 is going to help them build the most optimal healthy bones that they can. And then, of course, taking it after menopause to maintain those healthy bones and prevent bone loss is important too. But one of the things that bone nutrient does for the rest of us between 24 and menopause, right, is provides optimal nourishment for our adrenals. Remember, it needs extra C, D, magnesium, and zinc. The other thing that bone nutrient does is it gives our body what it needs to create the optimum levels of hormones. So giving our bodies not only good nutrition with lifelong vitality, but if you're experiencing some hormone fluctuations, being able to provide a little bit extra with bone nutrient is going to give you as much endogenous hormone as what we can get, and that's the ideal situation. So don't overlook bone nutrient along with your lifelong vitality. One of the things that I like to do is take bone nutrient at night because of the magnesium. It will help you get a good night's sleep. Now moving on to Claricalm. Claricalm is an oil blend that does contain oils that have phytoestrogens. And so Claricalm is a wonderful way to balance out your hormones, either in place of phytoestrogen or, in my preference, alongside phytoestrogen. Now, Claricalm can be used as a pain reliever for cramps. There's oils in there that work as muscle relaxers. Claricalm can be used, especially inhaled, to help with the moodiness that come with our hormone imbalances. And it can be used intermittently as needed, or it can be used every day throughout a monthly cycle. Now, I've talked to a lot of women who love to use Claricalm during menopause and that kind of lots of feelings that come with menopause. And I hear so many stories about them being out in public and other women their age chasing them down, wondering what that smell is, because their bodies are craving that as well. So I do recommend and want to let you know that if you use Claricalm consistently every day throughout the month of your cycle, you may experience a decreased flow. You may experience decreased overall PMS symptoms. And so I really recommend that if this is something you struggle with, to try using it on a very consistent basis. Now, Claricalm can be used on the back of the neck. It can be used over the abdomen if you're having some muscle cramping there that you're wanting to alleviate. The other place that Claricalm can be used is the ankles. And the ankles, to me, initially when I first got it, seemed like the most ridiculous thing. But the reason Claricalm works when used on your ankles is because ankles are the reflex point to your uterus. So if you love the smell, back of the neck, low abdomen, if you're not a big fan of the smell but love the results, go ahead and put it on your ankles. It's going to work great there. Okay, now we talked a lot about progesterone, right? Remember we said that the ratio of estrogen to progesterone is really what's going to create a lot of symptoms that you don't want. So what can we do to increase our progesterone, right? Because progesterone is needed to make testosterone. Progesterone is needed to balance out monthly hormones, and progesterone is also needed to make cortisol. It's used by the adrenals, it's used by the thyroid. So thyme oil is going to help improve progesterone production. Now, what I recommend is mixing equal parts thyme and clary sage with fractionated coconut oil, putting it on the back of your neck daily. One of the amazing side effects of thyme is it's a great antibacterial agent. It's going to help keep you healthy. It's going to be great for your immune system. So using thyme and clary sage together is going to be great. Now, if you're a woman and you'd like to increase your libido, adding ylang ylang to that is going to be very helpful. And if you're a man, adding sandalwood to that is going to increase your testosterone production. Sandalwood, one of the active chemical functional groups in sandalwood is santalol and santalene. And santalol and santalene work to increase testosterone production. So sandalwood is going to be a great option with thyme and clary sage for hormone balancing in men. Now, I've shown here both Indian sandalwood and Hawaiian sandalwood. It doesn't matter which one. They both have the active chemistry that you're looking for. Hawaiian sandalwood is higher in ketones, and ketones give it that sweeter smell. So it's a matter of preference in terms of scent, but Hawaiian sandalwood, most people will say smells sweeter to them than Indian sandalwood. So I want to end, before we go into questions, I want to end with this picture of my sweet sister-in-law, Emily, and my niece, Claire. So Emily married into our family, and the agreement and understanding between her and my brother was that their family was going to be built by adoption. Her body, some systems in her body weren't healthy and well and functioning properly. And so this was the understanding that they did. They adopted my nephew, and he is perfect in our family. And Emily decided that she realized that there was some things that she could do to heal her gut and also balance out her hormones, some things that we've talked about today, and with no intention of anything more than having a healthier body and body systems that function normally. And one of the things that has changed their family and our family significantly through the means of a healthy body is this beautiful girl who has joined our family through biological means, because when your body has what it needs and is functioning well, it's going to function normally, right? So I'm going to go to the question and answer, and we will see what you've got here for me to answer. Why should we add bone nutrients for adrenal fatigue? Bethany asked. Well, Bethany, I hope I answered that. So we need to use bone nutrient for adrenal fatigue because our adrenals need extra levels of vitamins C, D, magnesium, and zinc, which are in the bone nutrient. It doesn't mean that you need to take it forever for adrenal fatigue, but in the process of healing your adrenals, giving your adrenals what they need to function well so that the rest of your hormone systems in your body can follow suit and have what they need, bone nutrient is going to help. Would the phytoestrogen be used in place of what we think of now as progesterone cream, or maybe in place of bioidentical hormones? So this is a question that I get a lot. It's a really great question. Can we swap one for another? So this isn't necessarily something that I am going to recommend. This is something that I want you to talk to your doctor about. There's some studies about hormone replacement therapy that are concerning. And one of the places that I would go if I were you to do a little bit more research on this would be Google Scholar. So you're all familiar with Google. Google has a branch called Google Scholar, and it's a place where they house their scientific research articles. And so you can go to Google Scholar and you can do some research there about hormone replacement therapy and phytoestrogen. So I mentioned there's a question about my sister-in-law and helping her heal her body. So in order to create good hormonal balance and systems in our body that function normally, you're going to want to look at two things. So number one would be the hormones that we talked about today, using phytoestrogen to balance out hormones. And when I say balance out hormones, really, you want to use phytoestrogen as a way of kicking out all of the extra false estrogen, the estrogen mimicking compounds, the xenohormones. You want to detox your body of those, because in so many cases, reproductive issues are fed negatively by those estrogen mimicking compounds, and you need to get rid of them in your body. The other thing that you want to look at is, in helping your reproductive organs work well, is gut health, and specifically candida. So using phytoestrogen and Claricalm alongside doTERRA's 30-day cleanse that is aimed at creating liver health and gut health is going to work together really, really well to create reproductive organs that have what they need to function well. The next question, hi Sydney, can clary sage improve cortisol levels for someone who has had their thyroid removed? So one of the things that we need to kind of also talk about in terms of thyroid is looking at the use of doTERRA's Xendocrine products, right? So something we don't talk about necessarily in this class a lot. You can go back to the cleanse and gut health and skin health class that we did 2 weeks ago and learn more about the Xendocrines. But Xendocrines are called Xendocrines because they work with the endocrine systems in our body. And so I would recommend looking at using the Xendocrine products either intermittently or in some cases, one of each of the Xendocrine oil soft gel and Xendocrine detox complex a day for some people. That helps support good endocrine function for their body. So when we're looking at, though, cortisol levels, I don't necessarily want you to think about cortisol levels being affected by a thyroid that's gone necessarily. What I want you to do is think about cortisol levels in terms of how our adrenals function and stress and sleep. So I would say getting excellent nutrition would be key, and working on decreasing stress. And I love to do this very, very simply by inhaled oils. And whether that's calming oils like vetiver or lavender or cedarwood, that would be great. Also using those topically. You guys, Peace Touch is one of my absolute favorites. It's a blend of all the calming oils, and it's in a roller ball. So just using that on a very regular basis, both in the morning and at night. Balance is another blend that can really do great things to decrease stress. And so clary sage is going to help more so with the estrogen side of things. If you're talking about cortisol and adrenals, Sydney, nutrition, sleep, and stress is what you're going to focus on. So I hope this is helpful. I hope that you guys have learned something here today. And I thank you for joining us live. And I'll be back in probably 2 weeks with another topic. Have a great day, everyone.